Welcome back to the Higher Form Podcast. We're here every week having real conversations with leaders, coaches, and everyday people about what it takes to become your best. We know life will test you, and we're here to share practical tips, tools, and relatable stories to help you build the highest form of your life. This week's episode, I wanted to take some time to dive into my own personal story a little bit and give you guys some insight on my journey and some of the things that have helped shape me, things that have challenged me, things that have really helped me become who I am today, and ultimately things that have led to what we consider the higher form mindset. I am a creature of reflection. I would say that I'm a pretty intuitive and deep thinker. I talked with Brittany and joked with her about even coming on this episode with me, but she felt like, you know what, I think it's a good chance for you to just get some deep reflection and really share some of your experiences. You know, I played college football. I came from a split family. I had worked my way up through the corporate ranks before starting a business and becoming a father, and feel like I'm at a point in my life where I've had a lot of experiences that I can draw back on and a ton of recurring and common themes that have continued to resurface. And, you know, I really am big on reflection, like I'd said. So it's funny because I find I come back around to the same lessons and I learn them through different contexts and different experiences. So I thought it'd be valuable to really dive into mindset today and just share a little bit more about what goes on in this crazy brain of mine and how hopefully some of these things can help give you an authentic look at how I've really shaped what I want to accomplish in my life and how I've learned from the things that I've been exposed to and the environments I've come up in, but really just set the tone for an opportunity to see how I think and what's allowed me to chase the highest form version of myself. I will start by saying I do not have it all figured out. I am the furthest thing from perfect, and the more I learn, the more I realize I do not know. But I think that's a part of the journey, and that's a big part of what we're all here to chase, is taking in the things we experience, the lessons that we learn along the way, and sharing them with others. And that was the whole reason we built the platform in the first place. So I'll do my best to really boil this down to 5 things that are strong principles that I keep coming back to in all these different experiences. And as I walk through each one of these things, I'll tell some stories about how I've come to light with this and come to these specific focus points and get some reflection back on, you know, what I ultimately learned in those situations, and hopefully share some things that help you piece this into your life and become the best version of yourself. So without further ado, we will dive right in. Number 1 is around adversity. Adversity is not punishment, it is preparation. And anytime you run into adversity, it is ultimately something that you should train yourself to see as opportunity. And a lot of times I've faced adversity in my life, it didn't feel like an opportunity in the moment. Everything from when I was 11, my parents splitting up. When you're a kid and everything you know gets kind of shook up, it makes things hard to wrap your head around what that means, especially when you haven't really fully understood all the things that go into that. From dealing to injuries as an athlete, I struggled a lot with injuries, especially through my college career. And they were, at that time in my life, the biggest setbacks and the hardest things outside of coming up in a split family, the hardest things I'd ever dealt with and things that challenged me to my core and really made me think twice about what my identity was and who I was. And I think when you're in the middle of those types of things, especially as an athlete, I'll speak on this in a little bit, everything that has ever made you confident, when you had that taken away from you with an injury, it shakes up who you think you are. It makes you think twice about, like, who am I really? Am I an athlete? Am I defined by the things I do? And I think a lot of people get caught up in that, even with exercise, right? You know, you see people get into bodybuilding or get into CrossFit or runners, and then they get hurt and now you can't play, or you can't play ball or whatever it might be. That shakes you up a bit. And that adversity feels like a lot in the moment, but there's always a lesson on the other side of that, or at least if you look for one, it makes it a heck of a lot easier to get through it in the moment. I've been rejected a lot in my life. A big part of being a business owner is selling your vision, both to prospective clients, current clients, employees, just your family, the people in your circle. And rejection's definitely been a big part of that, disappointment. And while these things have always felt really heavy in the moment, when I really look back on it, every single one of those pieces of adversity, especially the really defining big ones, have been a opportunity for me to decide to create a new path based on that adversity that I actually end up winning out of. Some people would say God puts that in your life for a reason. God makes you go through these challenges for a reason. whether you're someone who believes in faith or not, is regardless of the point. But adversity is an opportunity. And I think a lot of times when we go through pain in our life, whatever that may be, the loss of a loved one. I lost my dad when I was 28, unexpectedly to a brain aneurysm. Within hours, he was gone. So that was a tough one for me. That really helped me look at fatherhood different when I did have kids. So when I was an athlete and I had 2 knee surgeries and had to walk on at K-State after being in a position to get recruited out of a junior college, not have a career that I wanted, always felt like I was coming up short, didn't feel like I belonged at moments. I was stuck in that environment and stuck through that adversity, and really, really tried to challenge myself to see the good on the other side of it. And I'm a big believer that a lot of my success in health and fitness is that I had a passion for helping people move better and get stronger and recover from aches and pains, big on corrective exercise because of that experience I had. And I think that while oftentimes we get put in these scenarios in life where we're dealt with circumstances that we don't know how to really wrap our head around, or things that are almost too painful to comprehend, it can be easy to crawl up in this victim mindset and feel like you have no way out and not understand why you were in these situations. But from many and many times in my life that I've run into it, while even though in the moment it felt pretty daunting and overwhelming, every time I look back on any of these things, they provided me an opportunity to go to the next level. A couple examples of that, I talked about the athlete side of it and being able to turn around and then use that to better understand how to help other people through my own experiences as an injured athlete. I talk about the relationship side of that to make sure that when I got into my marriage that there were certain non-negotiables that had to be put on the table to make sure that it was something that made sense for us to move forward and make that type of commitment. When it comes to business, I mean, every big business move that we've had has been us reacting to adversity. Everything from being in a really cushy corporate fitness job, making 6 figures, doing well, and always kind of having that next carrot and step right in front of me, to the pandemic shaking that up. Had there not been COVID-19 and the pandemic, I probably wouldn't have seen a clear opportunity to step out and take the leap to become a self-employed business owner and chase the dreams that we'd always talked about, even when I was just a kid working at the rec at K-State. Someday it'd be great to have your own gym. And then all of a sudden you're faced with some adversity in life and you're like, shit, what do I do now? Maybe this is my shot. And I'm a big believer that if you don't go into it with that mindset, which is really hard to do, but if you can really cultivate that thought process around like, damn, this sucks. This is not something I planned. Where's the good in it? Because it's going to be easy to find the bad, but if you can look for the good, there's almost always a better path on the other side of it. To win, even in business, we signed a lease in our first place in 2023. We got settled in, had some hard lessons just with expectations, the leadership, and right when we kind of figured some of those things out, we're settling into what we thought would be a little bit smoother pathway forward. The city jurisdiction we're in at that point in time says, hey, you guys got to move. You got 90 days to 6 months to get out. That felt like, shit, we're going to lose our business. Everything we worked hard for is gone. All these things are happening. Like, all that stuff runs through my head. And then on the other end of it, we end up in a way nicer facility in a better part of town. Our coaches love where we're at better. Our clients are more in line with what we need and want long-term, the type of people we want to serve and can serve best. It's crazy. I think it's one of those things where, once again, adversity is not a punishment. It is 100% preparation. You just have to force yourself to see it that way. And that doesn't mean you can't be in the moment. You can't have your bad day. You can't sit in the shit for a little bit, but don't get stuck in it, and realize that adversity is opportunity. So that's number one. That's been a big one for me. Number two is effort over outcome. If you do not put the things in, the efforts in, you will never get the outputs or the results on the other end of it. That's pretty obvious. But a lot of times you can't control the results. And this is something that I've struggled with tremendously through the years, because I like to have control. If you're someone who is a little bit of, I don't know if you want to say control freak. If you're someone who likes to have control and you're like, man, I did the work, where's the result? One of the things I've had to learn as that person is that not everything is as instant as pulling out your iPhone and searching it and getting it there. Or even now, just in the last few years with the revolution of AI and where technology is going, It's going to make it even harder to delay gratification because a lot of what we want is at our fingertips. But the things worth having take a hell of a lot of work. And the results for those things are typically anything worth having are not going to come overnight. So that's a big one I've learned through the process as well. And that you can control your effort and your consistency and your attitude, but you cannot always control the result. And it goes back to what I'd said before. You'll see some carryover with these things is that you can put the effort in, but you can't always control the result. And when you can't control the result or it doesn't go the way you want, you just keep putting the work in and trust the process. So a great example of this, college football was a big one for me. I'll lean back on that experience a lot because it was early years of adversity outside of growing up in a split family. You get an opportunity to go play at a junior college. I was kind of like a late bloomer, so I didn't get a whole lot of looks out of high school. Went and played at a junior college, broke into the starting ranks pretty early in my career, had a lot of early success, and then I was in a spring ball practice the spring of my freshman year. A bunch of big scouts there. We had some guys on our team that ended up going to some pretty big D1 schools, Power 5 schools. Lots of scouts there. You're playing good. You're feeling good. Bam, adversity hits. You tear your knee up in practice. And you work your way through that. You turn around. You come back. You get back on the squad. You get back on the field. You have another knee surgery. It goes back to that adversity. But I fought through a lot of those pieces of adversity and kept putting in the effort. And my dream outcome, like any athlete, is to be the guy or the gal or the person on the team that gets an opportunity to experience some of that glory, not just as a team, but even individually, right? Like I think we all do things with our own selfish expectations of what we want out of it. I never got the outcome I wanted as an athlete. And it's funny because my dad used to always tell me the days that you're putting in the effort now, all the things that you're learning and you're working on and you're building toward, you're in a position where you're going to see the payoff for those years and years down the road. And that's just a piece of advice to anyone, especially if you're younger, like pay your dues, do the reps, don't expect results until later. But that's a big reason why you got to trust and enjoy the process. And as you start to work through some of these things, you got to remember that it's not so much about harvesting, it's more about planting seeds. Grew up fishing on a lake. So I think, a good analogy for that is like, you're not always going to catch something, but you got to enjoy the process of what you got to do. Some peace and quiet, time in nature, an opportunity to just kind of decompress or do something you enjoy or go through a process. You could say the same thing about farming or planting seeds. Some good analogies in that, but the reflection on this is really around commitment over convenience or process over results. And when you do the right thing and you stack those days and you stack those reps and you put the effort in, eventually you're going to get where you want to be. And maybe it won't be exactly where you thought you'd be, but the level of success you're working toward will come, even if it doesn't look the way that you thought it would across the early stages of your journey. And another big piece of this sounds cliche, but the work you put in when no one else is watching is ultimately what separates you from getting average results to good results, to great results, to being the best at your craft at what you do. So whether your goal is to be the best parent, to be the healthiest version of yourself, to be the best partner, employee, boss, whatever it is, I think the biggest thing you can do is just make sure that you're leaning into the process and focusing on that instead of getting too caught up in the results, especially when things don't go the way you want. The third one would be really about leadership and leading yourself first. It's really easy to have an opinion and share your thoughts about things that are outside of your control, especially in today's political environment and all the things that happen in our society. But the thing that I've always found seems contradicting to that is if you don't have things in order with your family and your own personal life, and you're not prioritizing your own self, you're not leading yourself to become the best version of you, it makes it awfully hard for you to lead anybody else or for anyone else to follow, or for your opinions to even be valid. And maybe that's a little bit direct, but that's who I am in my nature. And I think a lot of it at the end of the day comes down to being a leader of one before you be a leader of other people. So it's everything we talk about all the time, right? Leading yourself to exercise on a regular basis, eat well, get plenty of sleep, follow all the practices we talk about in pretty much every episode of this podcast. And as you get into all the different facets of leadership, whether it's business or parenthood or leading a team, all things I've experienced, but I'm certainly not the expert at, the best at, things I'm working on, always improving. It is awfully hard to ask other people to do things that you are not willing to or have not done yourself. And if you can't lead or lean into the things that you're trying to get other people to do, whether it's your kids, this is silly, but it's simple. Recently bought a bicycle helmet because we were hounding our boys about every time you get on wheels, you gotta have your helmet on. And about the time that they were old enough to really start talking back, it was like, there's going to be a day where they go, Dad, why don't you have a helmet on? I'm like, you know what? It's a very simple example, but you're right. I got to show you the way. I can't just tell you the way. And I think that's the biggest thing with this piece is the same goes for especially if you're running a business. I've always really prided myself on being a leader by example. And I've always respected people and leaders that I've looked up to the most when they lead by example. And it's probably one of the things I had the hardest time with, and I think is the hardest for people to buy into, is someone who preaches a message that they don't live themselves. So if you really want to be successful in any form of leadership, man, you got to lead yourself first. And I think that comes down to a lot of personal accountability. You know, whatever you got to do to make sure that you keep showing up, you keep doing those things. You're not going to be perfect either, but you got to set that standard and you got to make sure that there's a bare minimum expectation. So maybe one day it doesn't look exactly the way you want it to. Maybe you can't get that full 75-minute workout in. What's the bare minimum that day? Is it 25 push-ups? Is it a 15-minute walk? Is it accumulating a couple minutes of planks? Maybe it's on the nutrition side. Hey, I can't eat something healthy. I don't have the convenience. I don't have time. I was at work late. I was doing these things. What's the bare minimum standard? So I think that's the most important thing about leadership is setting standards, especially when it comes to leading yourself, because it can be easy to break them. But man, the time that you start breaking your own standards is the time that you stop being able to lead other people. So set that standard. That's been a big one for me, is my non-negotiables for myself. Like, what is my bare minimum? I may not be perfect today, I may not be ideal, but what do I need to do to be able to get myself over the hump and make sure that I show up consistently, keep the promises that I made to myself, so that I can turn around and lead for other people the way that I promised that I'd be there for them. The next one is purpose over perfection. And it goes back to results too. The process can be monotonous. It can be boring. It can be overwhelming. It can be really easy to get stuck in a routine of feeling like you're lost if you do not have a sense of purpose. And not only just a sense of purpose, but people talk about your why, but even that like deep emotional driver behind those things. We've talked about this before. I've been lucky to have people in my life that I can lean into, and blessed that I have people that I can talk to. Big shout out to my wife, Brittany. I know I joke with her and chat with her on this, but she's my processor. We joke around about this a lot, but there's truth to every joke, right? Your purpose has to be something beyond just wanting to be good or just wanting something, just wanting an outcome. It has to be something that gets you fired up and keeps you going, whether things are going well or they're not. The thing that gets you to show up when you win, the thing that gets you to show up when you lose. And that goes back to consistency with the process. But man, I think the hardest times in my life, just time back into adversity, have been the things that have turned me into getting the most purpose. I'll go back to losing my father when I was 28. Had I not gone through that experience, obviously I'd give anything in the world to have him back. And obviously, like, I would love to change that, but I can't. And I think the thing that's most important in those types of scenarios is like, what do I gain from this, right? Like what I talked about earlier. Not having him here has made me a better father in a lot of ways. And that may sound strange, but I don't have that connection with him, so I had to find it through my boys. And not having that connection, knowing that it could go at any day, and realizing that life is short and that things can change on an instant, it's made me look at every moment I had with my kids as that opportunity that I won't get it back. Something as simple as last night, they're strolling their bikes around in the garage. I'm getting a workout in. I take a moment in between sets to just breathe and think like, man, this is it. This is where it's at. Sometimes in life, it can be hard to stop and pause and reflect on those things, but those moments that allow you to ground yourself are the ones that will keep you going when things get hard or even when you win. I think on the other end of it, starting over in business, there have been times where we've been high and things have been rolling and everything's good. And then there have been times where things are low. And I think the easiest way to keep yourself even keel and stay stoic and grounded in those moments is looking back at the purpose. And the purpose is not the outcome, it's who you become in the process. So, of course, I would love to make millions of dollars and be uber successful, but it's not for the material reasons. And everybody who I've ever followed that I respect, people that do all the things that I'm talking about, that have inspired me to come to these conclusions on my own, they don't necessarily do it because of the materialistic gain. They do it because of who they become in the process. And I think that is the purpose of all of this, right? Like, we're only on earth for so long. We got to learn how to adapt and pivot through these different uncertainties and really lean into, like, what are we here for? And we're here for an opportunity to help other people. We're here for an opportunity to enjoy the moments we do have with the people we do have while we have them. And trying to work on being perfect has never been the thing that's made me happy. If anything, the focus on perfection over purpose has made things harder, because then you get stressed and you get overwhelmed and you get locked into all these different expectations around, well, this should be going here and that should be happening here. And unfortunately, life isn't that simple. It's not all a math problem. And that's something I've struggled with at times, because I am very logical minded. And I think it's easy to say, like, well, if this adds up this way and this should be this way and that does this and this goes over here, then I should be at this point at this time. And that has not been my experience either. So another big one for me is just leaning into your purpose. And that's the whole focus on what we're trying to do here too, is help you find where yours is at just through reflection, some of these experiences. And the fifth one is a page straight out of Jocko's book. Freedom is earned through discipline. And if you read the Extreme Ownership book that's on the table here, he talks about discipline equals freedom. I think the biggest thing within that is understanding when you can stay consistent and you want to create this level of freedom in your life, that doesn't come from just winning once. It comes from doing the same things necessary, leaning into the process. It comes from showing up when things get hard. It comes from working through the adversity. Like, this is the one that ties it all together, right? At the end of the day, if you don't have structure and consistency in all of the other things we've talked about, right? Being able to trust the process, staying on top of leading yourself, focusing on your purpose, dealing with adversity as an opportunity instead of looking at like punishment or pain. This is the one that ties it together. If you can't do those things and stay consistent there, the freedom that you're looking for on the other side of that will never come. And leaving the corporate world to build what we have at Avexia, finding ways to create balance with work and family. Every step of me trying to figure out my own version of this has had to have an intentional structure to it so that I could create the opportunity to work through it. And when shit hits the fan and things don't go the way I want, I try to lean back into that structure. And usually it doesn't mean go straight back into it. A lot of it means step back out, right? So this episode is one that I came to through a lot of reflection, and all these principles are things I came to out of reflection. So the advice I have on this one is, when things get tough, reel back out. Look at where you're at. Look at the big picture and reevaluate where your opportunity to tighten up the structure is. And from there, as you start to remove the things that don't get you where you want to go and line up the things that will start to lean you back into the results or the direction you want to trend your success, it'll give you a lot better opportunity to start to see some of those rewards that you're looking for. And even though you may not get the rewards, at the very least, that structure will give you peace, and it will give you consistency in the way that you maintain your day-to-day. And I think that's the big one, is to tie this part home, is that habits can feel very restrictive, and it can be easy to fall into this sense of monotony and boredom. But if you want to create freedom, you got to stay consistent, and you got to create opportunities to get into a pattern that you can repeat regardless of the external circumstances. And to kind of wrap it all up, really, these are things that I would remind you. I have not just learned once, but I continue to keep learning throughout the course of my life. They are things that I keep coming back to. They've shown up in every season of life. They've shown up every time I've faced adversity, every time I take a step back and reevaluate, and I look at, like, man, whether it was a personal scenario, in a relationship, in a loss, in business, in parenthood, in fitness, in health, all of these things play a large role in ultimately chasing the highest form version of yourself. So when you tie it all together, adversity prepares you, effort compounds, leadership starts within, purpose gives you direction, and discipline will create the freedom you are looking for in your life. And that is ultimately what the higher form mindset means to me. It's about showing up through every test, staying grounded in what matters, and just continue to chase the next best version of yourself. Because sometimes things are going to go different than you plan. But when you can take that adversity and you can turn it into an opportunity, you can compound on that effort and not focus on the result. You can lead yourself to keep showing up every day. You can stick with the purpose to help you when things are difficult, and you can stay disciplined to the routine that gives you the freedom you're looking for. You are ultimately becoming the highest form version of yourself, and that is what this is all about. So this connected with you. If you liked it, if you felt like it was impactful, if it made you think, that was the goal. I wanted to give you a little bit of my experience. Once again, share some of who I am as a human and what has created the opportunity for me to build the things in my life that I'm proud of. But a lot of times people need to hear these things, and I didn't come to them on my own. None of this is an original idea from me. These are all things that I picked up through other people, thought leaders, friends, family, teammates, coaches, people that have been in my life either by choice or by circumstance or by coincidence. But it just reevaluates the importance of having a good social circle and leaning into the success that other people have had that you want to emulate. Success leaves a trail. So find other people that are doing the things you want, connect with them, create a circle that gives you an opportunity to start to learn from what's made them successful. Pick out what you like, pick out what you don't. But if any part of this message resonated with you today, please share it with someone else, because that's what this is all about. That's what we're here for. That's why we created this platform. And I encourage you to take a few minutes to reflect on this and how it's impacted you and how your personal journey relates to it. The only way you learn is if you apply the things you learn. Knowledge is power, but applied knowledge is even more powerful. But hopefully these lessons help you build your highest form. And I appreciate you joining me today. We'll catch you next week.
This episode of the Higher Form podcast is powered by Avexia Health and Performance, your home for smart training, simple nutrition, and real accountability. Built to help you look, feel, and perform your best. Whether you're just getting started or chasing your next level, visit AvexiaKC.com to learn more and start building your higher form today.